Hello everybody, Manix here, back again with another clay tutorial video. In this one, I will be doing something different from what I've done in the past. This sculpture will mainly be made out of wires, because I decided to make a wired sculpture instead of using only polymer clay. And so a few things I did differently for this one is, I do not have a ground for this sculpture because it was just the unnecessary amount of clay. And also, as a challenge, I decided not to use glue at all when jointing everything together, just to challenge myself in using only the wires and clay to hold everything together. This is another original sculpture. This one I actually had no plan going into this. Everything you see here was done as improv, and it was really fun to do because I didn't know what the final product was gonna look like, but I had sort of an idea of what I wanted it to look like, and so now you're just seeing me make the metal frame for the entire thing. I actually baked this project a few times during its entire process because I found out between the first video and this one that you can bake the polymer clay as much as you want. It won't damage it or do anything to it at all. So I just use it as a save point. So when I finish a specific area like the legs, I would bake it and then I would continue on the next parts. All the music in this video will be in the description below, so check that out if you're curious. As you can tell, I'm going with a sort of steampunk futuristic look for the robot, kind of cyberpunk, but mostly steampunk-ish, with the gray tubing and the wiring that's supposed to look like springs on the legs. And this is the style that I went for the entire thing. I was balancing it between old robots and newish futuristic robots, so that was the style I was using for this sculpture. actually had planned to make a series of 4 different kinds of robots, but I decided eventually to just combine every single idea I had into this creation. So that's why you see that all the legs and all the arms will be different, because they were all different styles that I was planning to use, and I just put them into one amalgamation, and I think that looked really cool. After finishing the legs and putting it in the oven to bake, we're starting on the frame for the actual chest itself, and I wanted this to be circular, but I wanted the chest cavity to open up to show a molten inside core, which with a bunch of layers of teeth on the sides. I wanted to get like 3 or 4, but when I had made 2 layers of teeth, if I added any more, because they were already pretty big, if I added any more it would look too awkward and it wouldn't fit nicely. So I decided to go with just the 2 sets of teeth. I also forgot to mention that I am also using aluminum foil for this sculpture, and I will be using them for my next sculptures as well, to just save on resources when I build my frames, and to use less clay when I don't need to, because it's lighter and it's cheaper. Now I'm doing the molten core I mentioned earlier. I just took different shades from red to yellow, and I started pushing on them with a sculpting tool, hopefully to make it blend in nicer and more rigid, and it actually turned out a lot nicer than I expected it to. After that, we are doing the rows of teeth I promised, and so for these rows of teeth, I didn't want to make them all out of clay, so I decided sometimes I would use the wires to be the teeth, just so I can have some variation in the teeth, and it wouldn't just be all gray polymer teeth. Next, we're doing the first set of arms, and this is where glue would have been very, very nice to use, but I already said that I was going to challenge myself, so I decided not to use any glue and just use the wires themselves and connect them in ways so that they stay the way they are. You can see in the background, I was watching on my iPad a Let's Play of Detroit Become Human with the voice actor Connor, Brian Deckard playing the game. That's just a fun little thing. I didn't realize that was going to be in the video, but yeah, if you're curious, that's what's happening on my iPad on the side there. So the first arm we're doing is going to be sort of like a tentacle-ish arm, and I planned on doing this for an entire robot and having it 2 arms that are tentacles, but I decided just to include it in this one. For the second hand, I decided to make a claw-like scissor hand, and I only used wires for the teeth because I thought that would look nicer than the variation on the chest teeth. Now for the second set of arms, one of them is going to be a humanish hand but with 4 fingers instead of 5, and the other one will be a cannon, and I did not know how I wanted to make this cannon, so I just improvised on the spot with detailing, adding some orange and fiery details inside the cannon looking like it's about to fire. For the fingers themselves, I wanted them to be springs, and so they would look robotic, but also the fingers could have definition. And I didn't want to use any clay for this part because I wanted to be pure just metal. I thought of the idea of putting clay inside the springs so that it would stick better to the rod that is the base of the finger, but I eventually just ended up not doing that. And I also wanted to make the tip of the fingers out of metal, but I just couldn't get the right shape, so I just decided to use clay for the tips of the fingers. Like I said, I didn't have an original plan for the cannon, but I knew I wanted to have like a gun hand, and so I decided to make it sort of look like a flamethrower with the canisters at the bottom, and I added a bit of designing a bit of color inside the cannon itself, looking like it was ready to fire. So now we're starting the head, which is the final part of the sculpture, and for the mouth I wanted to do something something cool. So the top half of the jaw would have 2 sets of teeth in the inside, but the bottom half of the jaw would have 2 sets of teeth that would face the outside of the sculpture, and I thought that was a cool little thing to do. I guess now is better than any time to actually talk about the story, because yes, this sculpture actually had a story behind it, and it's, well, not story, but it had a lore behind it. And so basically the story goes that in the future there's this scientist that creates a computer that its only objective is to rebuild itself no matter at what cost, to keep itself alive. And as a test, the scientist unplugged the computer to see what would happen, and eventually this is what it amalgamated to. So yeah, if you were curious, that's the story behind this. And the destroyed whitish thing that you see at the top of the head, which I'm detailing right now, is the computer itself after being unplugged. I couldn't have two symmetrical computers, so I decided to go for the red eye with the yellow pupil. That sort of reminds me of Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, where the main antagonist, the robot, had a similar design in the eyes, and so I thought that was just a cool thing to add to this sculpture as well. So now we have to attach the head to the body, and this is again where glue would be nice, but I decided to just use the whatever wire I had left. Again, this same as my last sculpture, the last step is to spray the entire thing with gloss, just to give it that shiny feel. Before making this sculpture, I got really bored and I made the Durr Burger and Tomato Head from Fortnite, and I actually plan on using these in future sculptures, but they're not going to be what you think they'll be, so stay tuned for those. So yeah, that concludes this polymer clay video. I hope you enjoyed it. Here's the final product. I'm just going to show a few different views of this sculpture, and yeah, I had a lot of fun making this. It's actually my biggest sculpture, and it's also the one that took me the longest, even though it's one of the lightest sculptures because of how much wire I used instead of clay itself. So that's pretty cool. One thing I learned from this is that clay does not stick to metal or aluminum foil easily at all, and so that was an issue I had, and a few pieces actually fell off, and I decided not to glue them because it would ruin the challenge, so yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.